Welcome to episode 10, the first episode of the second season of Bedtime Stories for Grown-Ups, a podcast that is created from the stuff of dreams. Once upon a time, if you were lucky, someone told you bedtime stories. Maybe someone read you books, or the same favorite book over and over. Or maybe someone made up your bedtime stories, telling you nonsensical things until you closed your eyes and let sleep take you away. These bedtime stories are the whimsical, made-up kind. Little scenes from dreamland to guide you there. There is no plot to follow, no sense to make of anything, just a sequence of images from beyond the consciousness of day to help you let go and drift into dreamland. There was a group of us on this journey. We liked walking along the outside route because there was so much more to see. We were walking along the trails of a giant three-dimensional relief map. There were a lot of animals wandering around. They were all out of their cages during the day. They could go wherever they wanted, and they all seemed to get along well enough. The stray and unwanted cats were hanging out with the tigers and lions. Their cages were in the giant caves behind the waterfall, up on the cliff face that overlooked the valley below. But now look at the sky. There are so many tornadoes forming in the south, and they are fast approaching. There is lightning coming from them. It is fantastic to look at, but also quite frightening. And suddenly a tornado is forming right above us and becoming very bright. We are trying to run away, but now we are directly underneath the tornado, and we find that we are running in slow motion. There is a great flash, and we end up tumbling down the mountainside after being struck by lightning. But we are still alive. What a storm! We leap from a high viewpoint on the edge of the cliff and soar above everything. We need to remember to give thanks to the crows for this gift of flight. If we fly high enough, we can now see the whole relief map spreading out below us. We can even see the edges. It is a rather dusty three-dimensional model that has been long forgotten in the basement of an old museum that no one ever visits. Meanwhile, some giant princess ships have arrived in the harbor. They are designed for children, of course, and they all have various princess-themed parties underway. We are trying to continue soaring above these ships, but suddenly we are spotted by a group of tourists who do not believe that we can fly, and then we find ourselves crashing to the ground. Everyone rushes over. "Are you okay?" Yes, yes, we are okay. A little embarrassed and sore maybe, but we are okay. There are groups of families having potlucks in the park. And somewhere in the background there is also some kind of interrogation going on in the shadows. Now there are large groups of people forming lineups everywhere. The people are getting tested for something. They are volunteering to try out some new invention that lets you freeze yourself for the future. Someone has put an advertisement out there about this procedure that is filled with misinformation. And the children are playing where they shouldn't be. This is getting dangerous. We should leave now. We do have a way out. A secret path. We are pretending that it goes one way when really it goes the other, because we don't want anyone following us. We want to keep our secret path a secret. For some reason, we have left something behind, and so we have to go back. We are heading back toward the highway on foot. But we have mats that have lights, and helmets with lights, and even lights on our shoes. So we are okay to merge with traffic, which is going very slowly. Eventually, the traffic stops moving altogether, and we are beginning to wonder why we chose this day to make our way across the city. At this rate, we will never get where we are going. At least, not until after midnight, and then it will be too late anyway. We pass a big open amphitheater, and this is where we lose our guide. Where did he go? He seemed to just disappear into an elevator. We decide to pull out now and head back. Change of plans, everyone. We will find our way back through forest trails. Let's get away from these congested highways. We are visiting some friends in a large red country house with several outbuildings and a barn. The three of them live together with a couple of large sweet dogs and a whole host of teenagers. The teenagers are their children and their children's friends. These are unusual teenagers. For one thing, they sing all the time. They are constantly breaking into song, and they have really beautiful voices. And they all seem so healthy and content. We asked them if we can start making song requests. We want to go for a swim in the river, but when we get there, we discover there is construction work for a new mine underway. We can't swim where we used to, because the water is full of arsenic and cyanide. We are considering looking for a new place to swim, maybe upstream from the mine, but we don't find anything suitable. And then we feel quite disheartened. They are poisoning the river. Maybe we could go swimming in the ocean at high tide. But we cannot see the ocean from here. The first time she had this baby, there were complications. The baby would not have survived if she had not been close to medical help. So we did not understand why this time around she wanted to go up to a remote cabin in the mountains just before she was due. The trail wasn't very good, and the cabin wasn't even finished. We opted to stay behind, but still, we worried about her. Maybe she just didn't remember what had happened when she gave birth to this baby the last time. Anyway, there was nothing we could do about it. Just hope for the best. Maybe she would come down the mountain before she went into labor. We find ourselves on a road trip. Someone else is driving, and we are not getting along very well. We keep coming upon obstacles and strange happenings in the road. We stop for breaks, and every time we get back into the car, it is a different car, and someone else is driving. None of us know how we got here, or where we are going, or why the cars and drivers keep switching on us like that. It must be some kind of strange magic. Then we make a lovely discovery. We have come upon the most beautiful place, and so we decide to stay. Where is this place? What year is this? Now we are not quite sure when we are. That is because this is a dream road trip. We are at a Scandinavian festival in a church hall. There are shots of some sort of sweet liqueur being passed around, and sugar milk, which we do not want. Someone pours sugar milk into our teacups anyway, and they overflow onto the table. Oh dear. We think that we should probably go to help out in the kitchen, so we leave the table and make our way to the kitchen to help with all the dishes. But when we look back, we can see ourselves still sitting at the table with our sugar milk tea. What is going on? How can we be in two places at the same time? Or are we in two times in the same place? And then suddenly we feel an enormous force pulling us from behind the knees. It is pushing and pulling us really powerfully back toward our other selves. It is kind of scary, and we are trying to resist at first. But then we stop resisting. We decide to let whatever happens happen. And then we realize we are actually in a dream, and everything is fine. We are hanging out backstage at a theater, watching holograms of the performers running through rehearsals. It turns out somebody has stolen another man's story and then capitalized on it. The original storyteller never made a penny, but he says he will get his story back one day. The stories always come back to you, don't they? Isn't that how it works? We left before the performance started. We found ourselves wandering lost in hallways that seemed to go on forever, and we could not find our way out. There are dogs running wild through these hallways, and of course, there are no dogs allowed in here. Only cats. We try to corral the dogs, but they are quite out of control. The pack mentality has kicked in. They can almost taste the freedom of their ancestors. We finally come upon an elevator that looks like it might be a way out. But once inside, we realize that the floor is tilted at an angle, and there are no walls or hand railings to hold onto. This elevator is dangerous. It doesn't just go up and down. It also swings out into the neighborhood and floats past a film shoot underway and a number of noisy construction sites. There are some artists writing poetry on parchments on the walls. We don't recognize the script. It looks like a very old form of writing. Or maybe the writing is not of this world at all. We apologize for disturbing the artists at their work and carry on in the fancy but dangerous elevator without walls. We have nothing to hold on to. Maybe we should have taken the stairs. We finally end up in the basement, but still we cannot find our way out. Now we cannot even find our way back to the elevator in the darkness. And it turns out that there are no stairs after all. Wandering around in a stone cellar, we come upon a familiar window. We have looked through this window before. We have always really liked looking out through this window. Is this where the children get lost in their daydreams? There are strangers in our house. They are having a tour. We did have to leave the children alone at one point. And then we were caught by the neighbors. And now they are going to put us on trial in the community. The punishment could be either mild or severe. We are hoping for leniency, being grounded essentially for a few days. House arrest, they call it. That would mean missing work and losing some income, but that would be the best we could hope for. We know it was wrong to leave the children alone, and we won't do it again. Some of the neighbors can be really vicious, though. They like to see others suffer. The trial was going to take place at the local performance space where people like to go to hear live music. The show was supposed to start at 8 p.m., and the musicians were already in place. We felt badly putting a downer on the whole evening because we had to have our trial by neighborhood consensus before the band could start to play. And who is looking after the children now? We are setting up a business information day for the children, but we are really disorganized. We are running around and we have piles of random notes everywhere. It is chaos. The guy in charge is worried and fretting. "Don't worry about it," we said. "It will be fine." And he said, "But what about the goat?" And we said, "We are definitely keeping the goat on the agenda. This is all about business, right? And the first order of business is always to acquire a goat. We are starting at the very beginning. Besides, it will be fun for the kids to have a goat in the classroom." There is a woman who leaves fresh vegetables behind everywhere she sits. At first it was just cherry tomatoes, but eventually she was leaving piles of all sorts of vegetables everywhere she went. Who needs to go to the marketplace? Just follow that woman and bring a basket. Thank you for listening. Sweet dreams.